a system. Like whenever we get requirements from the clients, it will be always will be oriented more on most of is like a new feature, or we need to implement this particular functionality. These cross-functional requirements, this will be focused more on how to operationalize it. Like this is an application. What are the operational requirements for it? That's what it primarily focuses on. And if you want to name a few, like it defines how a system should be accessible, how a system should be in a performant, how a system should be secure, how a system should be auditable. So that's how the requirements will be. If you want to take again a granular look, like ideally a cross-functional requirements will be look like the system shall to be requirement to objective. For example, the system shall be accessible to comply with WCAG 2.0 standards, the accessibility standard. So this is how a cross-functional requirement will look like. Okay. So there are a lot of cross-functional requirements is a very wide range of topics. Like each one has their own set of things. So let's see like a few cross-functional requirements, like what it means. First is let's take archiving. For example, if you are building a system, we might be storing data from the beginning. For example, let's consider like the system runs for more than 5 years, and you are seeing the need for data to be purged. Like the data volume keeps on growing, and we don't want to keep the data to stay longer more than 5 years. In those cases, then if you forgot those requirements, it will be like after the application is deployed into production, after 5 years, we'll be thinking about, okay, we need an archiving feature. So that's where like archiving part. Accessibility, like again, like we mentioned, like accessibility part, the WCAG accessibility standards, like people with vision deficiencies, or the talkback feature for them, those kind of things, whether our application needs those accessibility features or not. Next is auditability. Let's take example, like I'm a user and I'm having an admin privilege for the system. For example, let's take Shobhan is also one more person in the system, but he has only guest privileges. Since I know him personally very close, I'm just changing him as administrator. But for example, if any audit comes in the future, like if someone questions like who gave permissions for you to make Shobhan as an administrator, like and if you want to track like whether which person did it, actually I'm the one did it, but there is no system record saying that Ramakrishnan made Shobhan as an administrator. So those kind of auditability, it varies for application to application. It depends on the need, like what is the type of application we are building and what auditability we need. Next is authentication part. Like any application, we should have authentication, like to validate whether we are showing the information to the right users. Next is authorization part. Again, the roles and privileges, whether Ramakrishnan is allowed to see this particular information or not, or allowed to perform this particular action or not. Next is application availability, like whether the application should be 24 hours available, or we can have a maintenance window every 1 hour per week. Is it allowed? Those kind of thoughts. Next is the compatibility part. If you are building an application, whether it's compatible with that already existing ecosystem or not, or compatible with any of the applications you plan to build in the future. And the configurability part. Mostly, like configurability is not about the feature toggles or disabling or enabling features. It is more around like what you want to make the user to see, like whether if you want to set a particular theme for a user. Mostly all the preferences, system preferences related stuff will come under the configurability part. Continuity, again, it relates to the business continuity, or even the disaster recovery part of it. Like if in case of any disaster, how we make the application to spin up quickly in a separate another geolocation in case of even any natural disasters as well. Next is on the data integrity and consistency, like how much data integrity is important to us. For example, whether is it okay to lose a particular piece of data, or this particular piece of data is important, we should have a complete data integrity for it. Distributability. Yeah, one more important thing, like how the application should be distributable, like whether it should be an installable or whether it should be packaged and it can be easily shippable. Those kind of distributability part. Extensibility again on the API front, like whether any other applications is going to be built on top of our application, whether we need to expose APIs, those extensibility thought process. Next is on the help and support, like whether we need to have documentation, help and support related documentation for the user. Like there might be users with a different set of knowledge, so we might need to build a help and support, right? It differs from application to application, but that's what it is. Installability and deployment, like how the application should be installable and the deployment part of it, like whether it should be deployed in multiple geolocations and have each location should balance their own load. Like for all the traffic comes from India should go to the India servers and those kind of deployment related things. Integratability and interoperability, like if we have multiple systems or third-party vendors, or if we even have access to any other public APIs, whether how integrable is our application, how interoperable with our application is. Those are it. Okay, I just covered one part of list. It's a overwhelming list. These are all the some set of cross-functional requirements. Without diving much deeper into everything, I'll focus on few things in the session. So today's session we'll be seeing about automating few specific cross-functional requirements. Since it's an overwhelming list, we don't want to take everything and we can't cover it in an 1 hour. So we handpicked very few set of things for us to see how we can automate it. Okay. Before we look into like how we can automate, why CFRs are critical. Always that should be a need, right? For any set of requirements. The primary reason for we need to think about the CFR is introducing a cross-functional requirement after the project has been developed is very costly. For example, we have never thought about the usability of the application in the beginning. Then if you want to redesign the whole application, it's like entirely creating a new project. Or for example, let's take the authorization part. Like we forgot about the authorization part. We gave everyone the full access. If you want to provide access, then you need to touch the whole entire application and add authorization controls. So those sort of things will become like a re-architecturing of the whole application. And the few other common items which we will often miss is the system scalability requirements will get often missed. Like what is the required number of traffic we are expecting, or the number of users we are need to support, those sort of things. And one more item will be the compliance and the accessibility part. Like since a group of people coming to the develop, right? If we don't think about the accessibility part, or if we don't have any concerns on those accessibility part, we often tend to forget. So those, and also the compliance part, like the application might be deployed in some specific geolocation and there might have strict regulations for it. So those set of things. One more risk with CFR is once we understood CFR, right, we'll always be like, okay, yeah, I understand all those things. We need to do all those things. So this is the difference between two. There is something called over engineering, where okay, you think like I agree for my application, I need to have all the CFRs, like literally mean all. Okay, I want archiving, I want accessibility, I want auditability, authentication, everything. But that is not the case, right? If you do that way, like it will be like a over engineering. For a flight to run, we just need two engines. If we choose all everything, it will be like too many number of engines, and it will be very costly, and it's over engineering. And at the end of the day, business will be losing the money. And if one more another into it is the failure part. Like this is a classic example. Like there is a railway station, and they built the whole railway station without even putting the train on the track. So there are other ways to put the train on the track, but just an analogy, right? Once you build the whole railway station, and if you try to make the train to be enter into that station, it will be a costlier process. So the key always in balance. Like we should think like, for our application, what is the need? Like, this is the set of application we are building. This is our targeted audience. What is the exact set of cross-functional requirements we need? We should not do lesser. We should not do more. If we do lesser, the application will be a failure. If we do more, the application will be over-engineered, and we might have spent a lot of time in developing that feature, but no one will be using it. So there is a risk, right? How to mitigate it? To mitigate this, you just need to include all of your stakeholders in the particular discussion, like starting from your product owner or product manager or whoever term you call it, the entire team, the architecture board, the security team, the IT department, the information governance, risk and compliance department, and the executive board, which funds this budget, and the industry regulators, and also the legislation, legal related things. So once we bring all these people together, then, for example, if you take these three people are thinking, I might have some a triangle in my mind, and the other person might have a circle in my mind, and the third person might have a square in my mind. So only if we bring all those people together and ask about all those CFRs, like whether you need this particular CFR, like whether you need archivability, and for example, the executive director might have had a longer vision for this application of 10 years, and he might have said, definitely I need an archivability, but the team who develops might have thought those, and they say, why we need an archivability? So once we bring all those people together and discuss all those about, then you can come to a common understanding saying, okay, we need archivability. Every 2 years, the records should get automatically archived. Okay, now comes the interesting part, like why we need to automate CFRs. To be honest, as a QA, right, we will never get time to do all the functional testing as well. Like, for example, if you take if a small change happens in the future, and I have to validate all the functionality of it as well, and also I have to validate all of my CFRs. Like we have seen so many lists, right? Not everything won't get affected directly, but there might be some features will get, some CFRs will get directly linked to the feature changes. So whenever I do a functional testing, whether I have enough time to do a CFR, most probably not. So that is the primary reason, right? We need to automate CFRs. Like whenever any future changes happens, the CFRs will get validated automatically, because the CFRs won't be on our mind or top of our mind always, because CFRs are mostly about the operational part, right? Not related to the functionality or the features of the application. So it always takes a second priority. So to bring it to the front seat, we need to automate it, and to get a continuous feedback, and just to improve the overall quality of the application. This is why we need to automate CFRs. Okay, let's begin on the topic of how we can automate CFRs. I'll quickly check whether we have any questions.
No, Ramki, you can continue.
Okay, cool. So for this today's session, we'll be using a web application, since web is very close to everyone. So we thought to choose a web application and see like what are the common CFRs applicable for it. So we have a sample page, a single page application, and it has few widgets to say hello. It has to be good evening, Sabak. Geolocation, what's my current geolocation in, and what is my current date and time, and what is the particular language in my browser I'm having, and what is my internet connectivity, and what is my speed. It's 10 megabytes, and whether I'm in landscape mode or portrait mode, how I'm using that particular application, and what is my browser information. Just some simple set of sample application to demo the cross-functional requirements, the automation part of it. The tools we'll be going to use it is Puppeteer for doing the automation part, and Mocha for the test library, and Chai for the assertion things. Purely on JavaScript, everything. And we'll be using a tool called Lightos, primarily on the performance part of it, and we'll be using a library called Backstop.js for visual related things. We'll come back to it. And this is the application which is under test. Hope everything is clear. Any questions?
Yeah, there is one question.
I couldn't see the QNM. Okay, let me. Okay. Uh, is this only for backend point of view? No, this is not only for backend point of view. I think the we took the front end example today. We'll be doing for a web application. What are the some of the CFRs you need to take care? Over to you, Shivan.
Yeah, thanks, Ramki. So cool. Um, people, you got some understanding about what is CFR and how to be, what is the importance of automating it, and what are the risks if we missed anything on the CFRs. I will be taking to you some of the handpicked CFR requirements and how we can do it, automate in your uh, regression suite, and how you can effectively use that in your suite level. And yeah, first foremost thing is a compatibility of your website. So this is everyone doing it based on the client requirements, but sometimes the client will not be saying the web application whatever we are developing that needs to be perfectly work on these resolutions or these mobile devices. But as a QA we have to be take care of the device compatibility as well, because in a modern websites, we are developing all the web application as a very responsive in all the devices, and nowadays the gadgets also very much increased. So actually will be good to have uh, either one or two suits for your screen resolution, different types of screen resolutions, or similar to your mobile devices, like one is handpicked Pixel or one is handpicked iPhone. So this is the first and foremost thing of this cross-functional requirement. And yeah, today following all the requirements we'll be having a demo for you how we can do effectively with the tool called Puppeteer. And we have a many CDP supports tools, which is Chrome DevTools protocol, but here we handpicked some tools. um, we have a demo code for you, how we can do automation for your screen resolution, how we can for the device emulation. For this, we have used for Puppeteer and the framework called Mocha and Node.js. And here we have some test cases for device compatibility. And what I'm doing is I am running my scripts again the particular custom screen resolution. For example, I want to be execute my scripts on this width and this height. For example, if I am having a one end-to-end test for regression suite, I can have a one custom resolution or whatever the requirements, right? So we can have a fixed width and fixed height, we can do it. And okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm launching the application and I'm doing some assertions whether the height and width is 540 and 754. So where we can see, uh, so this is what we are going to validate, the width and height. So based on the responsive, the width and height will be changed accordingly. Yeah. So my second test case is device simulation. So here we are using iPhone landscape and portrait. Uh, so when we say Puppeteer, we have choose, right? So Puppeteer have a predefined devices that we can reuse for the emulation. For this, we don't need to have a fixed width and height. We can also be called the device, particular device name, whatever device you want. If you want a Samsung Note 10 or Samsung 20, so if you just pass a parameter for that, that script will against run on the particular emulated devices. And the landscape, so only thing we have to do is the iPhone X, and the if it is not given anything, that will be a portrait, and if we give anything, that is a landscape. And we are for the landscape, it's a desktop, so we are just asserting like landscape primary. So let me run the script. So just a minute, sorry. So
I think Shogun, you are in a different directory.
okay, so for our so whenever I'm having a script run, so you can see, okay, so it will be a very fast, right? So Puppeteer always will do a very fast execution. What I can do is I can have some, so I will be giving only the device, whatever I mentioned here, that will be running in a slow mo. So slow mo means each and every, so firstly it will be executed at the fixed width and height. The second thing which will be executed in the iPhone X portrait, and the second, the same suit will be executed against on the iPhone landscape. So this is a landscape. So this is how you can do a compatibility testing with the any of the CDP tools. So any question to take up, Ramki?
No, Shogun, not.
Cool. So we'll move on to the next one. So network compatibility. So this is another cross-functional requirement. Let's say we are developing a web application, and we are in a one particular place, and we are having a fixed broadband connections, right? So let's say when it is going to the live, some of the users will be having a different broadband connection. Some will use a hotspot, and some will use a good 3G or slow 3G, and if it is they are using regular broadband. So those kind of cases, how your web application will be behave. For example, it will work for us for in a good broadband for good 3G or slow 3G, they will have some performance issue, right? How we can have a test suite for our network compatibility. So this is not only the network simulation, we can be tested on operating speed. So each and every devices will be having a different CPU. For example, when you are having a web application, you are testing in a desktop, that will have a different CPU capacity. The same the URL when you are hitting in a mobile device, so that time your CPU level is low, right? So how your application will be how will be get to know whether that is working fine. So how you will be having automated script for that. And the other example is for example, if your web application you are working on a web application, so sometimes your network are disconnected, so that time how it will be behave. So how will you simulate those scenarios in your automation scripts? um, so let me take to you the code how we can do that. So here I have a same, we are hitting against our sample PW application, and my test script shell network CPU emulation for slow 3G. So here what I'm doing is I am slow down my network speed within a code, and also I am setting my CPU capacity as a throttling rate as 4, because I wanted to be tested my web application, and also I want to know how my web application reacting in a slow 3G network, and when the CPU capacity throttling rate will be less. So this is what I want to be I wanted my test cases. So for that here I'm using 512 kbps for my bandwidth. So there is an option in Chrome DevTools protocol. We can use Chrome DevTools protocol to interact with your network simulation, and you can also reduce your download throughput and also upload throughput and the latency. So the latency which will helps, it will delay your response from your server, and it will act according your commands. And these are the comments which will be used for our automation code. And yeah, we'll see how it will be work. So someone noticed before the device compatibility, it's completed within a 2 seconds. For example, when I slow down my scripts, let's say, if you see the latency of it, it still, it is not completed. It will take some time. It took 11 seconds. Actually, the Puppeteer will run the script within the 2 seconds, but it took 11 seconds. So this is how you can simulate your network speeds. uh, Here we haven't given any weights or any uh, you know any implicit or explicit. Only we have given a download throughput, the speed, and we have given a latency. We can see the slowness of your website. um, any questions?
I think Shubham, there were a few questions. One on the code part. I think whatever the code we are showing, I will share it at the end. Everything is in the public GitHub repositories, all the application, everything on the GitHub. Even if all the tools, like whatever we are discussing, all are open source ones. And there is one more question on whether is it possible to run these tests on Selenium. Selenium, they're planning to support CDP, or the support is in progress, but I think Puppeteer is very native to the Chrome developer tool. So, okay, if you want to understand this particular piece, like all the features, like whatever we are demoing, everything is available out of the box from Chromium. Puppeteer is developed to enable those features as a test framework for us, or not. I won't call it as a test framework, like a test library for us, like for to use it or to ease the actions to simulate.
Yeah, but Selenium is still in a beta stage, so uh, we can explore.
Okay, sure. I
Yeah,
think we can move it.
sure. So the next one is, the next CFR is the localization. Already Rankmi pointed out why we need a localization. So for this also, I'm giving some examples. When you are working on an e-commerce or retail application, we will be strict to have, for example, if you are in India, when you are launching the application, only the India e-commerce things and retail things will be come up, right? For example, if your application is deployed in Japan or some Canada region, so how will you be simulate those scenarios, and how you can be validated? Because localization is very important, that will ensures your application capable enough to work on all the regions, right? So the development part will be having a localization. There are things, but in the QA part, we will be validating the user interface and language vocabulary based on the region. If it is a Japan, that will be a Japan text. If it is a Canada, and if it is a Canada text, like side. So for example, if it is a retail application, you want to be specifically validate the currency format, right? So it will be based on the region. The currency format also will be changed. This is a default one, date and time format. So these are the things that we will consider for the localization. Yeah. So for this, we can also you can know, it's a you can hack your Chrome location, and you can also set your location as some Australia or Japan or United Kingdom, so whatever you want. So I'll be explaining how we can do it. Here we have a test suite for check site title, and again I'm using a Puppeteer. I'm using a Chrome DevTools protocol. So if you know already the Chrome DevTools protocol, you will understand what is the context. And here I'm overriding my permission. So for my Chrome permission, for example, if I am in India, my Chrome also pointed in the India location or India region. So I'm overriding. I'm giving permission to my Chrome for geolocation, the value which is in Chrome options. And I am setting my geolocation now. So how can I set this? A latitude and longitude, so everyone will know. So we can specify the latitude, longitude, and it will be taking some assumptions for if you want to be United Kingdom, at least it will point somehow you are in the United Kingdom at any places. For example, it will particularly point it to the that United Kingdom region. And so once, yeah, now my setup is ready. I have given a permission, and I have set up my geolocations as well. Now my browser changed it to United Kingdom, and this is the app URL. And what I am validating is whatever I set at the latitude, I just validating here. Uh, Before that, you can see here. So currently my latitude is 10 and longitude is 76. We'll see how it will be react when we are triggering. So again, I'm giving. Okay. So I'm going to run now. So if you closely watched out, you can see the different. Yeah, if you see, my latitude is set to 41. I hope everyone saw that. Again, if you know, I can run again. Yeah, so it's changed. Any questions? Okay. I move on to the next part, next to our CFR. Next is the web accessibility. So this is also most important thing in our cross-functional requirement. So some of people already we are doing accessibility testing. So how we can do it effectively, and how we can automate those accessibility testing. uh, so whatever we are developing application, right? So we are not developing an application who is 100% perfect, right? There are also some disability people. They can also give a space to work on the web applications, and they also interact with the web application, right? So I have some examples. What are the different disabilities who can accessible our application? Like some of them visually affected. They cannot they cannot address the correct contrast of the color. For example, if we have a blue button, they cannot identify whether the blue color and the button also. Some of them auditory. If you are having a feature which is you can hear something in your web application, that might not usable for them, right? So some of them physically challenged, right? They will be using only the keyboard or those things. uh, for example, the mouse and keyboards, they will be operating at. And cognitive people, and speech, like if you have a feature like you have a voice recognition feature in your web application, they cannot be accessible, right? So those are the for examples of the disabilities. So how we can mitigate or overcome these disabilities? uh, the WCAG, right, web content accessibility guidelines, they are providing some principles of accessibility. Whenever you are testing a application, right, that should be perceivable, and that should be operable, and that should be understandable for everyone, and it should be a robust. So these are the four guidelines which WCAG is recommended. And how we will be know as a QA, how we can know whether the web page is properly developed for the disabilities. There are three levels of conformance, like A, double A, and triple A. So this is like nothing but A is a low and medium and high. So this is a kind of low, medium, high. Whenever we see AAA, yeah, that is acceptable for the users. And if it is a double A, if it is a medium, and the A, it's a very low, and we have to be addressed. So these are the things which we can able to develop our web application with very accessible way. And this is not only the three types. We have a 30 63 success criteria. Whenever you're free, you can go and read about WCAG. And yeah. So here you can also automate your web accessibility, you can use some again Chrome DevTools protocols, because that will be giving a wonderful JSON tree structure for the accessibility. From the JSON tree structure, you can identify your labels or entitlement or your the elements. How should be the, for example, if it is a button or if it is a text, those things you can get from the JSON tree and you can be validated. For Puppeteer, it is giving a snapshot of your page. So whatever your page accessing, that will be giving a snapshot to you. So that snapshot will be a JSON tree. From the JSON tree, you can validate your text, whatever the requirement which you want to test. Yeah, that you can be tested. And it's also good to have to add the accessibility also in your automation suite, so that we will be not missing any of the missing cases for the your upcoming releases if we forget also. Yeah, I will be showing what is the JSON tree, how it will be doing. And the next thing is, what I'm doing is I'm changing my language. We already discussed about in the geolocation, how will be overcome the language testing, right? So here also one of the way you can also change your language of your browser, like Google Translator. Yeah. So here nothing I'm changing, so I'm just setting up a header like France. And so for viewing purpose, again I am adding some attributes. Sorry. Okay. Okay, first my suite will be running for the JSON tree, and the second you can see the language here. Yeah, your language is changed to France. So again I'm running. Yeah, so here it's changed to France. uh, Before I talked about what is a JSON tree of your accessibility, this is my application sample WPA, and it is defined each and role of your element. So this helps. Why we have this JSON tree like role and the name? It helps the third-party tools uh, for the accessibility thing. So definitely the accessibility people, they will use a third-party tools, right, to read and listen the text and everything. So for them, this will be very helpful. If it is anything missed out in this page, we can directly report to the dev team, and we can able to fix if anything missed out in the page.
You can relate this to like all the talkback features. Like even in ATMs, there will be talkback features for them to use the ATM system without even seeing, right? Those sort of things for an web application.
So here we are just validating the title of the PWA. Um,
I think we can move to next. Show no questions. I think on this part.
Okay. So next aspect is performance metrics. So why performance metrics? So this help us to measure the inspect or track your performance metrics of your web application. Let's say you are having you are developing a new application. At the first time it is going on a live, you have some basic levels of code, and it is have a minimal performance, right? When it is day by day, it will be increased, right? So all the web application will consume some memory, and it will consume our CPU load. So that cannot be beyond the certain value. So those value those metrics like memory consumption and CPU load and DOM node content, and JS event listener, or JS heap size of your web application. So those things you can validate on your release basis. So whenever your code is increased and whenever your functionality is increased of your web application, that should not be affect your performance. So those things you can be validate using the performance metrics. Yeah. Let me take to you code. Yeah. So I'm having a performance test suite. Again, I'm using the same application. So here the puppeteer, right? So the puppeteer, what it do is it will give my metrics from the page. So for example, as I see, right, memory consumption or CPU load or node content. Here the metrics will be a JSON format again. So from the JSON format, we will be taking a JS heap total size, and it should be a less than of, uh, for example, it be a 5 MB. So for this, my sample PW application, we have set the value of 5 MB. It should not be beyond 5 MB if the upcoming releases. So this is how we will be validating our performance metrics of your web application. We'll see more detail when we will be console it. Sorry. Cool. So these are the performance metrics which Puppeteer giving to us, and the timestamp is a default. Leave it about that. The frames, how many frames are there? How many event listeners are used by the web applications, and nodes. DOM content node count, that is, and this is a layout content, and how much duration it took each layout or took time, and it's a script duration, the web application scripts, not our test script, and the task duration, and this is a heap JS heap used size, and this is what we validated. The total size of JS heap that should not be beyond a 5 MB. It will be a kilobyte, so if we convert it, it will be less than of 5 MB. So these are the metrics that we can validate against your web application. Yeah, good. So yeah, we will move on to the next one. Yeah, next one is the client side performance. Uh, yeah, so whenever we are having web application, we are mostly worried on your server side performance testing, right? But also we need to be consider my client side performance also good to for our users, user perspective. And here we have a Lighthouse audits. It's a Chrome engine which will help you to measure your scores, like performance score, your client side performance score, and the search engine optimization, which is used to provide a good results, and it will be based on your performance and everything, right? Performance, accessibility, best practices. Based on your Google search, it will be come on the top. That is what a search engine optimization score. And accessibility, as we see, right, the Google also provided some accessibility hints to us. We can also see the accessibility things, and we can also act up against on that. And the best practices, so Google is giving a best practices. If you fix this, your application will be good. So those things also the Google the Lighthouse engine will be provided. And yeah, and also it's good to have your client side performance also will be your regression suite, and also a CFR. Let me show you how we can validate your SEO score using tools or automation test. Yeah, this is a client side performance suite. So here I'm validating my SEO score should be 100. Okay. Here we are using the library the called Lighthouse, which will help us to getting the performance scores from the Chromium or Chrome Dev Tools. Here, what I'm doing is here I'm doing some basic setup things for the Lighthouse, and here I'm getting my SEO score. So I'm just asserting it like it should be a 1. Here we can have two different values. So we have taken a score. We can also have a percentile, for example, 75th percentile or 100 percentile. So based on that, you can validate. Here we just taken a score, SEO score. Okay, and yeah, I'm just printing out. this is something else. We are generating a report. Let me show you in the end how the Lighthouse report will be visible to you. Quickly. So it's again running on my sample PWA web application. So don't confuse with the application we created for our the workshop. I printed SEO score, which should be 1. So here I have validated, I converted my percentage with the score. So that equals to 1. So my test is passed. And you can see the time to interactive also with the 2.5 seconds. So we'll get to know what is time to interactive in the next slides.
Shubham, there was one question on the chat, like how application is capable and handle load when it is increasing day by day. It is his from okay, sorry, side.
Side Nidesh.
Okay, sorry, Nidesh. Okay.
Side Nidesh.
Sorry, Shanish, if I'm reading your name wrongly, but okay, to answer your question, right? We are talking about web applications. We often complain, right? My Chrome browser is taking all of my memory, right? But that is not actually Chrome browser. Like the web pages you visit, like those web pages, they add contents every day, day by day, and they add more features, and it grow in size. And your server may not be feeling that load because it just need to serve those front end pages, but the browser has to read all those JavaScripts, all those image files, and process it and render it to the user. That's where like this particular performance is primarily focused on client side performance. Like I'm developing an application, it should use only less than 5 MB in the browser. Like for the it's primarily focused on the clients. For example, if I'm having a very low end Android mobile and I'm accessing e-commerce website and it takes very huge amount of size, then the person will have a bad experience. From that perspective, I hope it clarifies.
Yeah, we'll move on. We have 8 more minutes. Yeah, so next is web vitals. So this is also very important key aspect of your cost function requirement. Let's say what is web vitals. So these are the quality signals that your application is very good enough to deliver to the users. There are some core web vitals we have, how we can measure your application is capable enough for the users. We can differentiate in the 3 categories. So one is loading and interactive and visual stability. The loading, okay, we have a 3 aspect: loading, interactive, and visual stability. How will we measure it in our client side performance? So there are 3 things: largest content painful, which is the loading, and largest content painful will validate, or it will be measure how much time it took painted all the contents is painted in your web application at the first time. Whenever you are loading the application, there will be some time to load all the components, right? So it will measure how much time it took to all the components can be painted. And so that is the loading. And the interactive, uh, yeah, one more thing, how we can measure the largest painful is enough for the users, or it will be a great for the users to use your web application. There are 3 signals: good, needs improvement, and poor. So whenever you see the value will be less than 2.5 seconds, that you are good, you are in a safer side for your user performance. And whenever you see 4.0 seconds, more than 4.50, you have to be addressed, you have to be see how to be improve your web application. And next one is a first input delay. It's a straightforward the interactive of your component. So it will help us to measure how much time it taken for the user to interact for the component. For example, if I say I have a button, how much time it is taken for the clickable action. So those things it will be validated in the first input delay. This also same thing. If it is a below 2.5 seconds, that is a good. And if it is more than 4.30 seconds, yeah, it definitely needs to be addressed. And the third one is a visual stability. This is more on your UX side. For example, this also called be a cumulative layout shift in a technical term. So for example, it will be validated how much movement it took of the loading the pages. For example, you have a component in the right top corner. When the user is seeing the component, right? So still the page is loading. After the page load, the component will be shifted to the below. So then that is a bad experience for the user, right? So it will be validated how much moment it took, you know, visible in the particular viewport. So that should not be happened for your users. So
I think everyone might be able to relate, right? We might be filling some text in some particular form, and suddenly the page will get shifted to the bottom due to some image loaded on the top, right? Those sort of bad practices we can identify using these cumulative layout shifts.
yeah, thanks, Anki. And so let me quickly go through the code, which is having the web vitals. Here I having a three test cases and one suit performance test. And first thing is a larger content painful, and again the basic set of lighthouse audits. And from the audits, I'm taking the largest content painful, the value, so how much seconds it took. And for the user, for viewing purpose, I'm printing that one, and I'm validating. For my assumption, my application, it's good to have less than 3 seconds. So that is my assumption. It's not even assumption. We can also discuss with your every stakeholders, and we can design the value here. And likewise, the first input delay, which is nothing but the interactive, how much time it took for the interactive for the users. And here also we come up with the baseline that should be less than a 3 seconds. And the cumulative layout shift, it will be giving a 0 1 value, so like a boolean. So for example here, so here I have taken a display value, which is the seconds. That should be a 0.1 second. You also can take a score, here. If you take a score, it will be a 0 or 1, or you can also have a percentage. Here I am going with a display value. So let's see how much value given. For, yeah. Basically it will take some 2 to 3 seconds, because it will go to your dev tools, and it will be validating, and it will be printing the results for you. And also it will be it also will be depend on your performance or your website. So if it is took lot time, you will be getting a results some delay. Okay, so yeah. So the largest content painful is 2.4 seconds, but my criteria is below 3 seconds. So I am happy to have 2.4 seconds. Yeah. And first input delay also it's a 2.4 seconds. It's time to interactive. And also, okay, the cumulative shift layout is 0. So 0 means, yeah, there is no shift found. If there is any shift found, that will be a 1 or 2. So based on your shift count.
One more thing to add is like you can mix both the things. For example, you can simulate a 2G network or a 3G network or a low-end mobile device, and then you can measure like what is the time taken for my application to render.
Exactly. So the next one is the visual regression. So in our modern website, we will be having a different UX, right? So day by day, the application will be having a different design that will be playing a nice roles, right? So how we are validating those visual regression things? We have a many available tools that we can be tested in your using a visual regression. And also you can think of how it will be behave like for end users and end user interface testing. So that also you can be validated using visual regression. And for example, how it will be do is it will have a reference image for you, and it will be validating against for that. For example, if I'm running the first time, I'm having a one image that will be take a reference. And if you are the second run, that will be taking a separate image, and it will be validate both. So this is how the visual regression will be compared and it will be validated. So for that, we have some different tool which is already we discussed, right? Uh, Backstop library. So quickly I'm jumping into visual regression. So Backstop test. So if you have a time just to go and look at what is Backstop and how it is doing. So here we are just taking yourdomain.com for our test purpose. So this is how your Backstop report will be like this. So in the first run, whatever you are hitting, right? So it will take a reference image and it will be validated against your test. And likewise, we have two images, and this is the one for phone and this is the one for tablet. So Ramki, do we have a time to edit it and show it?
No, sure. I think we're running out of time.
Okay.
Basically, it does screen capture. Like if we edit the image and add a text, if you run the test and it will compare and it say like it's failed. The images are differ, and you can see the what is exactly where it differs. We can move. Actually.
Sure. Okay. Mm, good. Yeah. Over to you, Ramki.
Okay, so the key takeaways, right? There are always a lot of different types of CFRs. Like there are too many to deal with, and you need to get what are the CFRs required for your application. For example, your even in the things we have seen, right? The geolocation one, we may not be targeting the users from different geolocation. Might be targeted only for India. So you may not need those. So always focus on like what is the cross-functional requirement for your application, and then automate. And okay, one more important factor to consider is it's as important as functional requirements. Like if we miss those, then again it will be a total disaster. And one I think the operational part challenges, we cannot predict all those CFRs in the beginning itself. There could be chances like we can think through everything, but sometimes it may emerge during the development of the cycle. So we have to keep those in mind, like build the application in a way such a way that whether it will be little bit expandable. And okay, the next is the point of balancing, whether we are overdoing or whether we are not doing at all. Just always keep the balance to it. And so CFR discussions always will go overwhelming. Like there will be too many people involved. So try to listen from each perspective, like from all the personas, and try to find the right set of CFRs. And always automate CFRs. Like um, in today's world, we won't get time to test the functional as well. If we want to do the CFRs, it's hard. And I think one question I think I kept it for the end. I think someone asked about the practical challenges. The practical challenges for it is um, some CFRs you might use different tools to automate. For example, even the first CFR, right? The archivability part. Whether I can use Puppeteer to do it? No, definitely not. For that, I might be using some backend database tools to simulate those loads, and then see whether the archiving happens or not. So it always will be different mix. So again, you need to balance like based on your time, like how much your time and how much appetite you have to do all those, and how much critical to it is to your business. Based on this, you need to find the right balance and or automate those CFRs. The business critical CFRs, like if it is all different regions, then all the localization international for sure you need to focus. So prioritize and do it accordingly is always the challenge. Like finding balance, explaining it to say like always find a balance is very easy. Like in a project to find that balance is always harder. That's the challenge I mostly faced with to automate these CFRs.
So
Uh,
we can explore more things. We have many tools. So which one is appetite? Yeah, we can use it, that one.
I think looks like we have.
We'll move on Q&A. If there is any Q&A, we can go for 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Suresh. I think there are no questions on the Q&A. We'll stay on the call for a few moments. If you have any questions, please post it and we'll try to
Yeah.
answer. I think Said